On offthehooksports.com, your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. The Off the Hook podcast at offthehooksports.com or Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you go for your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Off the Hook with Dave Hooker starts now.
Since we last spoke to Chris Landry, you know what has broken loose in college football, so we're going to get to that. It's amazing how in 7 days, not even that, Chris and I talked throughout the week how it can just upend itself. Brought to you by Owl's Nest Barbecue right there in Ooltewah. They've got all the pellets, they've got the wood chips, they've got everything at Owl's Nest Barbecue, and some beautiful, beautiful grills. Okay, so did you hear anything about, Chris has his ear to the ground, did you hear anything about conference realignment and the Big Ten going and getting USC and UCLA before it broke, so to speak?
Not at all. I mean, I think it's normal, Dave, as we're right at a year ago when we heard the Texas-Oklahoma. It was at Media Day, if I can remember correctly. So a little under a year. I think we're at the stage, Dave, where we should not be surprised at just about anything now. What we thought we knew, and the way things were, this would never happen because of ABC, and that would never – that's all out the window. So, I mean, I'm not surprised that stuff is happening, but specifically to that, I do not. And as I looked into it and checked into it, it's real simple. And this is about USC. USC has all the tradition, the heritage. They could be what Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, that's USC. That's what their potential, that's what their DNA is. But in checking with folks, dear friends out there, they don't have the same financial resources as Ohio State, at Alabama, or most of the SEC schools. They are dealing with a fraction of the budget. Oh, USC's they got money like everybody has money. They don't have the money that's getting ready to come to them as part of the Big Ten. And just for example, they're just building their staff at USC with these graphic, recruiting guys that do they got 1 million people now and staffs. USC's just starting to get there because they're behind because financially they don't make that much. A, they don't make that much in the Pac-12. B, they got more mouths to feed. There are more sports in the Pac-12 than you can shake a stick at. Far more than the SEC, by about 10 or 12. I mean, water polo, and they got more stuff. So this makes all the sense in the world. And I think UCLA is just the little brother that they're bringing along with them. It's a really good move for the Big Ten. It kind of puts them in step with what the SEC is. And so, but I didn't hear it. Now, to me, the most intriguing thing is what next? Because there is a next. And I don't know when that's going to be. Maybe it's a year from now. Maybe it's sooner. I'm hearing sooner, but I don't know. This is going to be fascinating.
Chris, I think one of two things are going to happen way quicker than we thought. There's going to be a mega conference where the Big Ten and the SEC work things out. Now, I don't know if that can happen. Or there's going to be two super conferences. So whatever that number is, if it's 32, 38, for however many schools, what are the ones that are on the fringe of being left out? Like that, you've got the Florida States, the Clemsons of the world who have good recent tradition. Could they be left out? Let me take it a step further. I'm big picture questioning you here. Vanderbilt, Northwestern are academic institutes. Are they? I like what Northwestern's done with Pat Fitzgerald, but are they up to a championship level of playing 10, 12 elite teams every week? I don't know. I mean, I don't see how all this shakes out till you get the 38 or 42 best football teams.
Yeah, I think in terms of Vanderbilt's, if it's a 14-team league, Vanderbilt's 14. You go to 16, they're 16th. They go to 18th, they're 18th. Unless somebody just really stinks. Like they're having a major catastrophe and they're just worse. You know, Vanderbilt has to schedule very creatively out of conference and maybe try to win a game or two in conference just to go to a bowl game. Northwestern, I think it's a great point. I think it pushes them. It makes their path even tougher. And I think what makes and we're seeing conferences rethinking this. We're going to put our two best teams in the championship game. Well, that eliminates basically the West of the Big Ten because the strength is the East.
Yeah.
I would tell you that at least where it is right now, you know, 6 out of the next 8 years, it's going to be 2 teams from the East. And it's not going to be Iowa and maybe Wisconsin, but Northwestern has a chance because they've got a shot in the West. But you put them in the hierarchy of the, you know, overall Big Ten, not going to fare very well. I mean, they're better run and better organized and much more stability. And by the way, fantastic facilities on Lake Michigan that all things that Vanderbilt doesn't have. So Northwestern is quite a bit better than Vanderbilt in terms of what they can do football-wise. But in terms of making an inroads in the Big Ten, now that you throw particularly USC in it, no. And again, and I'll reiterate, it's not over. The Big Ten's not done, and the SEC's now on the clock. And I think what the real story is going to be, first of all, Pac-12, Big 12. Who gobbles up the other? Does the Pac-12, does the Big 12 get like Utah and Colorado to, well, in Colorado's case, come back and they kind of basically demolish the Pac-12? Or does the Pac-12 maybe get a couple of schools and bring, I mean, it's kind of, the Pac-12 is not in any better shape at all than the Big 12. And the Big 12 was the low-hanging fruit. Now I think it's got co-low-hanging fruits. Now I do think that Washington and Oregon, particularly Washington in Seattle, and I think Washington and Oregon is still really good brands in the Pac-12 that somebody might be interested. But the Big Ten, my understanding, is not interested in making that move. They are interested. The Notre Dame factor is the other thing that I'm looking at, and the ACC factor. The ACC, I think, is going to go the same path as the Pac-12. I think the ACC is close to getting rated, and we can get into more about who. You can probably.
Oh yeah, I want to. This is exciting stuff that we don't usually get in June and July. So yeah, I definitely want to get into that. Let me sidetrack you for just a second. Do you think Lincoln Riley knew this before he went to Southern California?
Oh no, I don't know. I mean, I don't think any of this was.
That's like above our pay grade. Is that a good way to say it?
Yeah, I mean,
pay grade.
I think here's the thing. Here's the thing that in retrospect, you asked me if I knew. You remember, and I didn't, but it makes you think about things. Remember when I mentioned here in this forum several weeks ago, the Big Ten was supposed to have their new TV deal by Memorial Day. And it hadn't happened. Well, you know, those things just kind of drag on. You got to cross the T's, dot the I's. Well, that's not what was going on. They were working on getting the second biggest market in college football. The Los Angeles market. So, I mean, they're going to get their deal will surpass the SEC's deal that they just recently did. The one that, you know, when the CBS contract's out and the ESPN's Big Ten has trumped that now. That will be worth more. It's going to be worth almost we're not talking millions now. We're talking B with billions. We're talking almost $100 million per school when that's done. And if they are able to get Notre Dame to come in and maybe one other school that I think they're looking at possibly, it could even be bigger. This is going to be a fascinating watch.
Okay, let me ask you who that other school was since you teased me.
Look, I'm going to tell you the school that would surprise folks, North Carolina,
I've heard that.
It's a big population base. They've got Maryland, which is the DC that, and it has the state, the high prestige academic school kind of profile that, like UCLA does. By the way, that's kind of the draw there. Like Michigan's great. The Big Ten would love to get Notre Dame in North Carolina, is what my understanding is. Now, people say, North Carolina would never leave and give up North Carolina, Duke, and the ACC. I get it, folks. This is not – I don't like this. This is not like how I grew up. I like the small leagues and Tobacco Road. Folks, that's over, man. It's all about the money. And if you're talking about what they could do for their program, and they're trying to – I think that's interesting to watch there. As opposed to – and I think North Carolina, if they were to leave, would have more interest in going Big Ten than they would SEC, because they're kind of snooty and they're academic. We're better than SEC. And then I'm curious to see what Clemson seems like a natural target for the SEC. You think the powers that be, the athletic director and Dabo Swinney, do you think that they're not right now looking for a lifeline? Because they are in the ACC right now. They are falling behind money-wise, and they could jump right in and be a part of it. I mean, and I think that would, as the next step moves, I think it's Clemson and I'll leave the end. Yeah.
But let me ask you this. Why wouldn't, the SEC step in? If Clemson's itchy, it makes a lot more sense for them to be in the SEC.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about. No. Okay. The Big Ten would not be interested in Clemson.
Okay.
North Carolina. It's the SEC that would, I think, be the natural fit for Clemson. And then I don't know. Would they add? I mean, I think if you're in this kind of one step in lockstep, Clemson would be a fit for the SEC. And then would they add also Miami or Florida State or both? But you usually like to add by twos. So is there a fourth? I mean, Notre Dame, look, I'm not going to rule out anything. I just don't see Notre Dame in the SEC. Notre Dame, I've never seen Notre Dame anything but an independent. But I also think the path to the playoffs and the money, Notre Dame did their own TV deal because they could collect on all of that money and didn't need to share it with anybody. Well, the money is getting so big now that the share is bigger than what they probably can get independently. But I'm sure Notre Dame is going to do their, do they look at it? So does like CBS come calling for Notre Dame? And the contract is up because CBS not going to have football soon. So, I mean, could Notre Dame get more money by themselves or joining a league? How does this affect them in terms of playoffs? Because it's going to expand. I think this is fascinating. And Notre Dame is the chess piece that I think the ACC is doing everything they can to get them full-time. If they wanted to go to the ACC, they'd already done it. Big Ten would take them in a heartbeat. The SEC would take Notre Dame in a heartbeat. It's just Notre Dame is the one piece that everybody wants because the brand is just off the charts. Make sure I think it would take the television deal to new heights.
Here's what I would do if I were the SEC, assuming they're not going to get Notre Dame. This is Commissioner Dave for a second, and it's brought to you by Steve Ray's Midnight Oil Service and Tire Direct in Ooltewah. I'm taking my son's car there tomorrow for an oil change. Right there in Ooltewah, they do it all, and they're fair, good people. Right next door is Al's Nest Barbecue. But, Chris, if I'm Commissioner Dave of the SEC, I'm playing off what you said. I'm taking North Carolina and Clemson. Okay, so that's playing off what you said. But then I'm going to get a little bit weird, okay? So I'm also taking Florida State, which Bobby Bowden, God rest his soul, would roll over in his grave to join the SEC. And then my surprise team, as a marketing guy, I'm taking Duke. I want that North Carolina-Duke game to be an SEC game. Now, they're better than Vanderbilt. They're historically they have been, or at least nip and tuck. I think that would be incredibly cool just as a marketing person for that Tuesday night, whenever it is in January, and then it tends to be in early March, and then again in the ACC or SEC tournament now. They play again. I just think that would be an awesome gem for the SEC that has nothing to do with football.
You know, that's really interesting. I haven't really thought of that because I am thinking football, and Duke doesn't make sense in football because they're better options. Like it would be like, but I would say this. I don't know that North Carolina wants to go to the SEC, but if they could get Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State, Miami, that would be the better football move. And they could get those, let's just say that they could. It would be interesting. Do you trade out leave a Florida State or a Miami behind and take it? I mean, these decisions are so driven by football.
Right.
It would be a death knell for the ACC now. I mean, you go in and just take the heart out of that league. You take North Carolina and Duke. That's dead man walking as a league then, because that's a basketball league. You're taking away the biggest rival in college basketball from a basketball league, and you're putting him in and say, oh, yeah, football league, and you can do that little basketball thing too, and we'll take that. That's interesting. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what folks are thinking. Virginia Tech's name has been mentioned in the past. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that the markets now are as big. It's going to be very interesting because I don't think the Big Ten or the SEC want to just add somebody. I think they want to add quality. Who's the quality left? I mean, right now, I've always said you don't have any. Once Texas and Oklahoma left, you got nobody left but Notre Dame, unless you start poaching one of the other quote-unquote powers. Clemson, North Carolina. People say, well, North Carolina, Chris. What's the deal with North Carolina? What I mentioned, big-time academic school, big-time athletic department, have had success in football. We know what they can do in basketball. If you looked at the ACC, most people that are looking at this now look at North Carolina or Clemson as the plum school to pick out of the ACC, and it really depends on who you are. I think the SEC, if they can only take one, would take Clemson. I think if the Big Ten could only take one, it would take North Carolina. But and I don't think the Big Ten wants Clemson. It's just like the ACC didn't want West Virginia because academically, they didn't rank high enough. So it's interesting to see now because we can talk about academics. We can talk about who has better this or that. It is the financial draw. And to your point, I don't know. Let the experts, the money crunchers, do it. Maybe if they say Duke and North Carolina will bring you more money than North Carolina. And so I see it. But I do think Clemson would be one of them. But I think what's interesting is you're going to add by 2 or you're going to add by 4. And I think right now with Clemson, North Carolina, Notre Dame, maybe Miami, Florida State, I think those now are the ones that you say, which ones do we want to go get, or the other is going to get it, meaning Big Ten and SEC. I think they're kind of thinking like that now because I think there are a lot of surprised people in college administrators last week.
I've made fun of the SEC basketball tournament a lot because it's only important to one team. That one team, like Georgia, when the tornado hit back in 2009, I guess it was, they were able to win 2 games in a day, and they were able to do, okay, that's great. But for the most part, we know who's going into the tournament.
Kentucky Invitational is what they call it.
Right, the KIT. So, but if you imagine walking into arena and you've got a Kentucky, a Duke, a North Carolina, a Bruce Pearl at Auburn, a Tennessee with Rick Barnes. That's something I'm going out of my way to watch pre-NCAA tournament.
I agree.
I never watch the SEC tournament because it's just a money grab.
I agree. Great. So maybe if you get you get Clemson, and you get, if the SEC, going by your theory, okay, see if you can convince North Carolina and Duke to come together. Then you add Clemson, and then either Miami or Florida State. You got the two footballs and the two, the Tobacco Road, whether you want to call them athletic, success programs. But yeah, no, I think it would be quite interesting. It would be quite interesting, and it would kind of make a huge statement of, I agree with you. You wouldn't add a basketball school unless it's something like Duke, if you paired them with North Carolina. No, it's interesting to see. That might be something. And if there's a little bit of a North Carolina, Duke, some of that, we don't want to lose that. Would they take that to both together to the SEC? Well, the answer is, in normal sense, hell no, because they're a ACC. But if you're talking about maybe $30 to $40 million more a year on TV rights, they say, well, we can be rivals in another league. And, back in the day, there's a Southern Conference before there was an SEC and all of that. Times change, and we just got to – I just think right now what has happened, what started last year with the SEC and now with the Big Ten, if you're not in a big player and making big money like a USC, they told me we can't compete with Ohio State unless in Alabama and those, we can't compete with them right now. We don't have the money. We are short a lot. It's going to make, they tell me they're going to make 3 times more on their TV deal than what they're making right now in the Pac-12. 3 times. Not double. 3.
It's good work.
Incredible.
It's good work if you can get it. That's Chalk Talk. It's brought to you by Al's Nest Barbecue and Steve Ray's Midnight Oil, a proud Michelin distributor. So we'll talk to you next week, and maybe the whole, I don't know, Conference USA will just be absorbed by the SEC. I don't even know if there is a Conference USA anymore. So we'll talk to you next week. Chalk Talk brought to you again by Al's Nest Barbecue and Steve Ray's Midnight Oil, a production of Off the Hook Sports. I do want to remind you to please like and subscribe on YouTube. We would certainly appreciate that, and you'll get early notifications of when videos go up. So we'll talk to you soon. Have a fantastic week, everyone.